What's up, gamers? It's your boy, JKon. Welcome to another video. With the 2024 VCT season starting this week, I thought it'd be fun to power rank each of the teams in the 4 regions. Now, this is a preseason ranking as to see how strong I think the rosters may be, but of course, we don't know how good they really will be until the season begins. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Please like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz, as it does really help me out. Feel free to comment where you have some of these teams placed in your rankings and who you're going to be rooting for this year. Now, without further delay, let's get into it. All right, we're going to start out with my home region, the Americas, because of course, we always start with them. We'll start from the bottom and make our way up to the top and kind of just how we'll power rank these rosters. Now, here's going to be a little bit of questionable here. Please don't hate me, Brazilian fans. I am not super high on the MIBR roster. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty excited about their new pickup of Artisan. I think he's going to be pretty good. He has a lot of potential as a duelist coming into this league. And they have quite a young roster, maintaining the core that they had last year, who were very young, including JZZ, FRZ, and RGO Meister. And they brought in Fraud from Loud, who did win a world championship with Bazooka with Loud in 2022. So they do have quite a bit going for them, but overall I think they're just more based off of potential rather than actual at this point. And for me, the big signing was their coach, and because of that, I'm just gonna put them down at the bottom for now. Next up, we have Furia in 10th. Now again, Brazilian fans, please do not hate me. I just have a lot of questions about this team. I thought Conan was a decent IGL when he was brought into the roster last year. I like some of their pickups. I think Liazi is really good, and MW is always an absolute beast, but I don't know. I have a lot of questions with this team. We've seen MW be the main duelist for another team before, and I wasn't very impressed and I didn't really like it. So I guess we'll just have to see with this roster. They definitely have a lot of talent for sure. Khalil is an absolute beast. Like, that guy is underrated in my opinion. So they have very good mechanically skilled players, but I don't know if that will translate into the server necessarily. So again, they're another roster that I think we'll just have to wait and see. In 9th, I have Evil Geniuses. Now you may ask why I put Evil Geniuses down here and above the Brazilian rosters, because they have a lot of questions as well. But one of the things when I see the EG roster is that they have brought in veterans for the most part, people who have been in the scene for quite a while. The only really newcomer on their roster is Apoth, but he played on the EG reserve team all of last year, so he basically was in tandem with working with the championship winning roster. They still kept Potter. I can't underestimate her. Jogamo is an absolute beast, and I think he got a lot better throughout last year, and he has still a lot more room to grow. I think Nature's kind of underrated in my opinion. Derek, I'm looking at a bounce back year. I don't know. I think EG can cook, just maybe not right now, but like down the line, they may be a lot higher in these power rankings. But again, this is just a preseason power ranking. Next up, I have Karoo in 8th place. Now, you may say I might be on the Croupium here, and the answer is yeah, I probably am on the Croupium here. But I like the signings that they made in the offseason. Unfortunately, they had another vacancy than was expected, but they ended up bringing in Shy from Leviathan, and I thought that he was very good. He's very talented, and one of the drawbacks of the LATAM region right now, unfortunately, is that there isn't a very large pool of top talent, so it's quite shallow to pick from who they can get. So I think nabbing Shy services is really good. Their 0-10 record last year was deceptive in my opinion. They were the best winless team out of the winless teams, and they could beat a lot of the teams above them. They came really close in a lot of their battles, so I don't know. I have a lot of hope on the Croupium, man, because it's an absolute beast. So for right now, I think that they're going to go higher than EG coming into the new season. Next, I have 100 Thieves in 7th place. I have a little bit more confidence in 100 Thieves than Crew at this stage in the game, just because they have brought over Zix and Boostio. The main thing for me on the signing for 100 Thieves with Boostio is that he is a very loud and strong personality, and I think that was what was missing from the roster last year. I think the roster last year had a lot of quiet personalities, so bringing in somebody that can be loud, dominant, can bring up the vibes, can get people back into games when things are going down, you have a championship winning IGL now. I think now that they've had a little bit more time together, they may be able to perform better, but right now I still think they're on the lower end of the table. Next up in 6th place, I have C9. Now, the thing about C9 is that they overhauled the roster almost completely. They only kept Zeppa and Jake from last year. They brought in Coach Emmy, Oxy, Whippy, and Vanity. Overall, I like a lot of the moves that they have. We got to see them perform in third-party events during the offseason, and they had like up and down performances, but they were also traveling all all around the world. They also didn't have Whippy for some of them. So I don't know. They have questions, but I also think that they have a lot of really experienced talent. The only one that's really kind of a unknown factor is Oxy, but that kid is cracked. So I'm excited to see how Vanity's system can set up Oxy, and right now I have them in 6th. In 5th place, I have G2. So I think G2 is getting kind of slept on. I think a lot of people are regarding G2 as just like, oh, the tier 2 teams haven't competed against tier 1 teams before and they're just at a lower level. But I kind of beg to differ, because the guard has been together for so long. The core, the 4 of them, they've been together for so long. They have competed in tier 1. They have gone to an international event. Yes, it didn't go very well with that one international event that they went to, because they were directly seeded into playoffs, and that kind of screws new teams. But nonetheless, they have a lot of very experienced players. They also signed Leaf, who was one of the best duelists and players in the Americas last year on C9. I think Leaf had an underrated year because people were not talking about them because C9 choked near the end. So I think they're going to be really good. I think Leaf is an upgrade compared to Tex. I just think that they're going to be really good. Slept on team. If anything, they can make waves, honestly. Next, in 4th place might be kind of questionable. I have Sentinels, and I know I've been huffing the Sen copium for a really long time. I made a couple of videos of them over the off season, but how can you not, man? It's a hype team. I like their players, you know, they're great guys. JKon is the future. I've been saying that for a really long time, but overall I just think that the remaining 3 teams are they're just better. I don't know what else to say. I think Sen has a lot of potential. They looked really good during the AVL. I think Zelsis and John QT really plugged and fixed a lot of holes and problems that they were having. I think Tens being not just willing, because he's always been willing to switch, but them being open and willing to have Tens on another role like Omen, which also unlocks a flexibility with Zelsis, because Tens' breach is not that good, but Zelsis' breach is, so they can swap with one another. I don't know. I think it just works really well, and I'm actually much higher on them now that they have Zelsis in there rather than Pankata, because although as much as I love Pankata and he's an amazing player, comms, vibes, those intangibles that Zelsis has, and the ability to be flexible to swap in and out with Tens on roles makes them a really good team. But for me right now, they're a 4th place team, because the other teams are they're insane. Talking about the insane teams, let's go to number 3 is Leviathan for me. So for Lev, they looked amazing during the offseason. We saw them at the Superdome. They just clapped everybody there. They were playing with Nauser, but again, Nauser in my opinion is a very good initiator player, and I'm kind of sad that he's not on this roster anymore. But as I've said before in my roster mania videos and other videos, when an upgrade is available, you make it, and Lev made that choice by signing Kong. Unfortunately, Lev no longer really has that South American identity as they used to have, but because of the shallow pool of talent, going international and building a super team around Aspas is not a bad idea. My only main question mark for the team is how will King and Mazzino transition to an English-speaking roster, and how will Tex fare in the tier 1 leagues. But I mean, if you have Aspas, kind of hard to question. I think they're going to be really good. Now, number 2, people might think this is really surprising or questionable. I have NRG. Now, people will be like, oh my god, NRG, are you crazy, JKon? What the hell are you doing? Yes, they brought the core back of Optic, bringing back Mard. They signed 2 world champions in Ethan and Demon 1. I expect them to be very, very, very good. I expect them to be number 1 probably by the end of the season. In my opinion, I expect them to be crazy good. But the reason why they're not number 1 is the reason why Loud is number 1. It's Sadak. I cannot doubt Sadak. I have doubted Sadak in previous events during like lock-in, etc. Again, I doubted him. He brought 2 rookies up to like almost near world-class levels. Kalanzine for sure is world-class level. They're bringing in QCK. Everyone keeps talking about how he's a Sentinel player. QCK was a Jet main. He's a duelist player that switched to play Sentinel only last year to make room for DG's in. QCK is extremely good at the game. He's not an Aspas, but Aspas is fighting for number 1 in the world. QCK is not, so it's hard to replace them, but I think with Sadak, with less, I cannot doubt them. They are number 1 in my book, and they're the strongest team coming into the new season, in my opinion. And that's my power rankings for Americas. Let me know down below who you have as number 1, or who do you think is the strongest team coming out of the offseason. I would really love to hear what you guys have to say. I'm quite confident in this, so I guess we'll have to see how kickoff shakes out. Very exciting. let's head over to EMEA. Now, EMEA, I think, is going to be extremely exciting. I think EMEA brought in a ton of rookies. Almost every roster has been revamped or has made changes for the most part. I think this is going to be a very fun region to watch. A lot more fun than last year, in my opinion. Right off the bat, I know we usually start from the bottom, but I'm just going to put this here. The only change they made was bringing in Elmo Putty. And yes, you could say, oh, Mini left from head coach, is now assistant coach. It doesn't matter. You have 5 of the best players in their individual roles from the region. If Fnatic aren't number 1, I would be absolutely shocked, stunned, surprised, and probably despondent, because I really love that team. So Fnatic are number 1. Now we'll start from the bottom. Now this isn't necessarily a meme, because I know they kind of had a lot of things, but I'm putting Koi in 11th place. I know a lot of people made preseason power rankings of putting Koi 11th there because they didn't have a roster and blah blah blah. But yes, they do have a roster. The only problem with the roster is I am only confident in one player, and he's a rookie, and his name is Camo. I think Camo is going to be amazing. The rest of them, I'm really unsure. I have too many questions about their roles. I'm not confident in Starzo being the IGL. Rubinho didn't put up the greatest numbers in tier 2. I don't know what role he's going to play. So Koi to me, just an 11th place at this point, just because I have so many questions for them. Next up, I have Gentle Mates in 10th. Now, this one I feel kind of sad about, and also kind of hypocritical, because as much as I was saying about the guard, this could also be applied to Gentle Mates. The only thing with Gentle Mates is they do have some experienced players, like Takas and Logan have played a lot in EMEA, primarily in the tier 2 leagues though. And I've seen some of their matches during the regular season. I thought they were just okay, and they really just had a tournament of their life, in my opinion, during Ascension. I think with a lot of VODs, like Existence can just do magic and work, but I just think the tier 2 effect might actually hit this team a lot. Natank and Takas are just gonna have to go crazy, but for now I have them in 10th. In 9th, I have BBL. Yeah, BBL, I'm not super confident on them. Just the power signing, I'm kind of iffy about. Elite, I think will be pretty good. Kushner X is different. He's him. So, I mean, they have talent, but I just think they're the second best Turkish team in the region. We'll just have to wait and see how they play. I think they really are a team that's just gonna have to wait and see. But Elite for sure is a talent, and I'm excited to see how he'll play in tandem with Kushner X. In number 8, I have Team Heretics. Now, the reason why I have Team Heretics in this is a preseason prediction, so they unfortunately do not have Woot coming into the early stages. They will be playing with Patitek in the starting roster until Woot becomes of age, I think sometime in March. So I just think that they're going to be a little bit weaker. I think Woot was their best signing in the offseason, although I'm quite high on Rienz, and Mini Boo has potential, and Boo is now the IGL, which he didn't get to do last year, which is really strange because he was the IGL of Oglu with Molzy back in the day. I just think they have potential, but at this stage with Patitek, although he's very good, he's a veteran, I think Woot has so much potential. So right now I have them in 8th. In 7th, I'm going to join them with the other young project team of Carmine Corps. Now, this team was led by Magnum, has a bunch of rookies on it. They did maintain Shin from last year, which I'm super excited for because Shin showed a lot of potential and actually played really well for that struggling team last year. And the duelist players that they brought are all freaking cracked. Martine is insane. I think Martine is going to be a guy to watch out for sure. They brought in Narrate, who will be most likely the flex player for them. Narrate put up absolute numbers on one of the worst teams in NA Challengers last year, so he has a ton of potential. They brought in Tamazi, literally Portugal's best player. It's exciting. They're coached by Aang. Like, man, it's exciting. I'm just super excited for them. I think they have a ton of potential. So I'm on Carmine Corps going with 7th. In 6th place, now this one might kind of surprise people, but again, this is a preseason ranking before kickoff. I have Team Vitality. Now, I am really high on this Vitality roster. I fully expect this Vitality roster to be contending for this second slot here, because Fnatic at the end of this will most likely be my number 1 team throughout the entire year. So I just really like this Vitality roster. I don't think that they are bad with Destrian at all. I think Destrian is pretty good. I just have a couple questions. I'm super high on Runner, but it'll take a little bit of time for them to figure things out. And although I'm really high on this roster, I'm just gonna put them 6th for now, just because when they get Trex, I think their ceiling goes way higher. So for now, they're gonna be in 6th. In 5th place, I have Team Liquid. The TL roster can definitely go much higher. I think there's a lot of variability in EMEA. I think by the end of the year, this 2nd through 8th slot can really shake it up and shift, and it can go almost in any direction, in my opinion. So I'm just gonna put Liquid in 5th for now. now. Yes, they're bringing over the core of Apex. Yes, they still have the Ambient Knots, who I'm big fans of. I think that they could go much higher, but I'm also more confident in the teams above them. Speaking of the teams above them, I have Giant X in 4th. Now, this one I don't think is really a big surprise. I actually think GX might be the dark horse of this region like they were last year. I think Cloud is a superstar and Nookie is still very good. Hoodie's an extremely underrated support player that plays extremely smart. Their coach Pipson's a very good coach, and the only change they did was losing Rhyme and brought in Redgar. So overall, I just think Redgar is still a very good IGL. He just has his into moments, and that happens. But this core itself is a very consistent team. They're very good, solid team. I'm putting them in 4th. This one might be surprising between Foot and Na'Vi, and you're like, oh, which ones are you gonna put in? I'm putting Na'Vi 3rd and Foot 2nd. We'll begin with the boys in yellow and black. I'm quite confident in the artist's return to Na'Vi. I think a lot of people might be doubting that. Some people think that artist might be washed or he may not just do as well. He did have a down year last year in NRG, but I just think that artist breaks the system that Angel has in a good way, and I think that is kind of an X factor that they were missing last year with CNED, because as much as CNED tried his best to fit into the system, it just didn't work. So I'm gonna go with Na'Vi 3rd. I just think I'm just really high on the artist signing. And last but not least, we have Foot in 2nd place. Now, why do I have Foot in 2nd place? My brother in Christ, bro, they signed a world champion in CNED. They got an upgrade in Yetuje. Both of their signings in the offseason were deliberate upgrades to a team that plays abnormal and are cracked. Ada Captain is insane. As soon as he's joined the starting roster last year, their team instantly upgraded. Mr. Fallen is a great IGL. He is very flexible in his role, and they brought in 2 cracked players that can fit the system. One of the things I was really enjoyed about Foot last year is that they set up Kiwi very well, and although Kiwi did not capitalize on 100%, CNED is the talent that can. Also, with the Sky nerfs, Krax doesn't play Sky. Krax plays KO. He is the KO main. There's also Gecko. I'm pretty sure Krax has played that before. So this is a meta built for Foot. I'm really high on them. I think they're going to be really good. And yeah, that's my preseason power rankings for EMEA. Let me know if you think Fnatic are going to continue to dominate the region. Do you think I have some people too high or too low? Let me know down below. I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say. Now, let's move on to Pacific. At the bottom, at number 11, without question, I have DFM. I'm not confident in the moves that they made. Yes, they brought in the core of Crazy Raccoon, which is of course a beloved organization. I'm just not confident in their players. I don't think they were that good. I don't think they did that well during JP Challengers last year. DFM are just like, what the heck are you guys doing, man? I'm just not confident at all. If they get a win this year, I'd be quite happy for them. So we'll go with that. In 10th place, I have Talon. This is another team that's kind of like, what the heck are you guys doing? I think the Lenny signing is pretty cool. Lenny only played, I think, like 1 or 2 maps with Team Secret last year as their 6th man, but he is a very good initiator player. He'll be the new IGL for this team. They brought over Ban, who played for T1 last year. I'm not very high on the Ban signing. They brought in Governor from North America, another North American import over to Pacific, which is really cool. They have a few of them over there. Governor, I thought he's pretty solid, pretty decent. He has good intangibles, but I don't know. I feel like this roster is questionable to me. I thought Garnets was really good and they dropped him. They signed Surf, which is cool. I said this in my pick'ems, but I think Cruz most likely will be phasing out of this roster sooner rather than later, but that's just my prediction. But overall, I'm not confident in this team, like, at all. So Talon for me is my 10th place team. In 9th, I have Global Esports. This is also another roster that just has a lot of question marks to me. This is the preseason. Yes, they have 6 men on the roster. They just signed Bazi. I like the signing of Polvi. I think he can be really good, but overall, there's just a lot of questions in here. Russ will kind of have to prove to me that he can frag. Benkai, we haven't seen since last year when he was benched for something, but Benkai was kind of struggling near the end of the year as well, but he did take that break, and hopefully that will give him that rejuice that he needs, because I love Benkai. I'm a big Benkai fan, but overall, I'm not super confident in this global roster. Next, at 8th place, we have Gen G, the full Korean roster. I think they brought in some pretty cool players. Like, I like Texture. I like the Lakia signing. Overall, it's pretty solid, but I'm just iffy on it. Yeah, they signed Solo as the head coach, which I think is a really good signing. So overall, this is just like a question mark team. They have talent, but I guess it's just like one of those, how will they perform? Gen G came out the gate dominating. They were 4-0, absolutely stomping everybody, and then they fell off a cliff last year. So just question marks over the team. I still like them though. In 7th place, this one I feel like I'm super underrating in my own rankings just on reflection, but I have Team Secret. I'm questionable about the NDG signing. Yeah, they dropped Dubstep, who did not perform well last year, but I also think they needed to replace Borkum, in my opinion, if they wanted more talent. I think Borkum, although he can be a good anchor, I just think he struggled a lot during the year. And although he's very experienced, I'm iffy. You know what I mean? But I still have really high belief in Jeremy and Envy. Those two young guns are really, really cracked. So I might be hella underrating Team Secret right now, but I have them in 7th. In 6th place, I have Zeta. Now, this one might be kind of ironic because Team Secret has only made 1 change, but I think they should have made 2, whereas Zeta actually made 2 changes. So they dropped Crow and 10, which I think is totally fine. I think 10 had too many inflexibilities that took Depp away from main duelist, and Depp is just better than him. I think the signing of Euron and Heroron can be really good. They're young talents. They showed it pretty well during their off-season events. They also brought in Carlisle as a coach, which is interesting, but he'll bring a different dynamic to the team. So overall, I like Zeta's changes, and maybe I'm just a Laz fan, but I believe in them, so I put them 6th. Sharing that little pocket right there, I have RRQ, and this is like another team that I think I'm probably sleeping on. I feel like just like EMEA, this 2nd through 8th can really be almost anybody. I think this is also another region that has a lot up in the air. So RRQ, I think the signing of JKon is insane. I think he's an incredible player. I think he's very, very good. The core that they kept of Zafiro and Flipshider are just really, really good. I think they're keeping 2GE as a 6th man. They also brought in Estrella as a secondary caller, who I'm pretty high on. I think he's a great initiator player. I think RRQ can really surprise a lot of people, and I'm hoping that they're going to surprise me, but I have them in 5th in my power rankings. And the only reason why I have them 5th is because I have too much belief in Bleed. I have Bleed in 4th place right now. I think this roster is kind of getting underrated a little bit. I've said this before, but I don't think a lot of people really are paying attention to how good the players on this team are, even before they signed the 2 players that they have. So Crazy Guy is a very good IGL, very good fragger. You also have Darion, who is flexible, a very good fragger, and they have Scary, man, and they're really good. And I said this in my pick'ems, but the signing of Egoist is crazy. Again, I don't think many people really talked about this, but Egoist is insane. He hard carried a team from the Sentinel position last year, and he can play more than just Sentinel. Like, he's a flexible player. So I don't know. I think this team is getting underrated. Maybe I'm overrating them, overhyping them, but I think Bleed are going to be good. In 3rd place, I have T1. I think the signings that they did are really good. I'm very sad about the retirement of Zeta. He's been a player that I've been a really big fan of for many years. As a fan of Counter-Strike, of course, he was on the only really good Korean Counter-Strike team at the time. So just seeing him there and seeing him transition to Valorant, he played on the C9 team, coming over from the C9 Korea team. I've been a fan of Sunny for a long time, so it's really sad to see him go, but this T1 roster is really good. I think they're really good. I think Rossi is a huge signing. I think one of the best signings in the offseason for sure is Rossi, man. Like, he's crazy good. But yeah, T1's going to be good. I think Xcrit has a lot to prove. Saya is still insane. I think Carpe can really develop and grow into an IGL. I think T1 can be good. I'm high on T1. And number 2 and number 1, of course, is DRX and Paper Rex number 1. We'll start with DRX at number 2. I like the changes-ish that they did. And the reason why I say ish is because I think that they needed to make a change. I don't know if they needed to change 2 players. If you're contending to try to be a contender, aka win the trophy, not just come top 4, not be a perennial contender, but actually win the trophy, you have to make a gamble sometimes when you reach your ceiling. And I think that roster kind of reached its ceiling. My only problem is I don't think they should have dropped Zest. I'm not saying that you drop the core of Stax, Mako, or Buzz. I think you have to keep those 3, but I think Zest just has done so much for them. I think he's just a really good player. I'm sad to see him go. RB already found a new franchise slot at Tech in China, so sad to see him go. He's a flex god, but he did have role inconsistencies within the roster. So bringing Foxy9 back in, who's already been sort of integrated with the core, and Flashback, I think are good signings. I think Flashback has a ton of potential, but I'm just iffy on Foxy9. He's just my big question mark. I think Buzz is a better duelist than him. Then why do you have Foxy9? Because if he can only play duelist, then for me, I hate one-trick pony. So that's just me. So I think they're going to be still very good though. I think Stacks, Mako, and Buzz is all you really need to be the top of this region. But will they be able to dethrone my Paper Boys? Hell no. Hell no. The Monyet signing is so freaking good. It increases flexibility for this team. The only thing that I have on the drawback is during the AVL, they were still playing with Jing, so I don't really count that off-season event to really prove how good this roster is. Also, my boy Mindfreak was playing Sova and he was getting shit on, so I love you, Mindfreak, but please don't go back to playing Sova, man. But Monyet is really good. This roster is really good. They're fun. They're unique. How can I not not root for them. I'm a paper boy through and through. And that's my power ranking for the Pacific region heading into the VCT kickoff. Let me know if I'm overrating, underrating some of these teams on this list. I definitely can be, as like I said, a lot of these teams can go up and down very easily. Pacific's going to be exciting, man. It's going to be exciting. And last but not least, we have China. Now, this one is going to be kind of iffy. I think China has a lot of variability just because a lot of these teams have changed and we don't really know too much about them. As much as I watched Chinese Valorant and I watched pretty much every evolution stage and a lot of their off-season events, there's still a lot of question marks overall. So we'll start with number one. It's going to be EDG. They're the kings of China. They're the best team in China. Everybody's chasing after them. Everything that needs to be said about EDG has already been said. They're going to be number one in the region again. Going to number 11, we have Nova Esports. And the reason why for this is just because Nova sucked during China's events and they kept pretty much everybody on the roster. They brought in a couple new signings, but one of their signings after, who is a Russian duelist, is on the bench. So I have no idea what they're doing. They're my 11th place team. Moving on to 10th, I have All Gamers. Now, AG, they have brought in experienced players, but they're all bench players. So to me, if you're on the bench, you're not good enough to compete. That's just for the most part. Obviously, there's other reasons like personal reasons, or the organization is just not good and you need to get out of there. You're held in contract, blah 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 blah. But like if you're benched because of performance, that means you're just not good enough for the league, in my opinion. AG has brought in a lot of known names, but again, they were benched, so I'm iffy on them. They have a lot of potential, but moving on, I have Wolves. Now, this team I'm actually very, very high on. I think the pieces that they have brought in, not the Monarch core, but the pieces that they brought in, spring from NIP. He's an insane duelist. They also brought in Plix, who was the IGL of Weibo Gaming and back in the day Sonics. And they also brought in Yuka, who was playing with ASE, and FPX before that has made it to an international event. He's a very talented player. I think they brought in good firepower, and I think they have a lot of potential. So this is kind of like a team that's going to be like, oh, what's gonna happen with them? How are they gonna shake out? This is definitely one of the teams that are gonna be like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna shake out? So I like them. I'm kind of high on them. I'm excited to see where they go. In 8th place, we have Tai Lu. Tai Lu, I was really iffy going back and forth on Tai Lu a lot. So the thing about Tai Lu is they were able to make top 8 multiple times during the evolution events, and just some of their players that they kept, I'm kind of questionable and iffy about. Although I love the signing of HFMI, the Alphabet Man, I'm surprised other rosters and teams did not pick him up because he's insane. I just have questions for this team, but top 8 is still pretty good coming into the ranking, so good enough for me. In 7th place, we have DRG. I might be underrating DRG here, but I think they made kind of a downgrade. They got FPX's TZH, who was their controller player, who did play in an English-speaking environment, so it's not surprising to go over DRG where they do speak English a little bit to help out Fukashu. But most of the time, they actually speak Chinese, and he kind of just figures it out along the way, but he's still insane nonetheless. Their duelist player, T-Virus Luke, is actually a very underrated talent. I think he's going to be really good. And they did compete against a lot of these teams during the events, but I don't know. I'm just questionable. They did look good during Ascension. Like, they won it. They powered up. They beat the rare Atom core. Like, yeah, I feel like I'm underrating them, but for now I have them in 7th place. In 6th place, we have BLG. BLG could be really hit or miss in my opinion. They exploded on the international stage, destroying NRG during Champions this year. They have quite a lot of talent on their team. They dropped their weakest player, but the only thing is they had kind of a weak offseason. Like, yeah, they did decent during the evolution events, but there's still question marks around them. We'll have to see how the new IGL Bear comes in. He's also switching roles to controller, so there's some questions there, but I still think they're very good. In 5th place, we have TEC, or Titans Esports Club. Now, this is known as RB's team, which I alluded to earlier, and the reason why I have them so high is just because they are so new. We don't really have too much data on them. They only came together as a roster to compete in the Evolution 3 series, and they did quite well. They placed top 6. They have a lot of potential. They have great players. Their duelist IGL Abuo is a very well-known name in the scene. He used to play for EDG, and they signed RB, man. I'm pretty high on them. I think they're going to be really good. Now we get to 4th place, and in 4th, I have JDG. Now this one might be a little bit lower than what other people have on their tier list, but for me, I just have a few questions with JDG. Yes, they brought in the core of RA, Rare Adam, which is the 4 of Stu, Vivo, Martin, and Yihao. But the only thing is I'm kind of questionable on those last 2 players. And although they lost their IGL Yeoman, I thought he was pretty decent. Stu and Vivo are just insane talents and can probably hard carry this team pretty far. The only big thing though is that they did lose the IGL and I brought in a new player, JKon, to be the IGL, who has not been an IGL before. So I just have a few questions with JDG and kind of what they're going to be rolling out with. Stu and Viva definitely have the firepower to be contenders for sure. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And in third place above them, I actually have Trace Esports. Now this one might be kind of a sleeper pick, but I just have a lot of faith in this team. I think their duelist player Feng Feng is incredibly talented. I think he's really good, and I think he kind of got overshadowed by some of the duelists in the region. Most notably, Kong Kong overshadows him. Stu, of course. Other people were talking about Autumn on FPX, who I will put in second place here just to finish out the chart. But overall, I think Trace are really good. Their flex player, quote unquote flex player, Kai, he's very young, very talented. He's also extremely tall, which is just a random fun fact there. I like their Sentinel flex initiator player, YOU. He's really good. Their IGL Heibei makes pretty good calls. He does overheat sometimes, but they're just a really good roster, and I think they're underrated. So watch out for them to be really good. Kind of similar to the other ones, but I feel like there may be less variability in China, but I think 2nd to 8th can again be almost anybody. Maybe even 9th and 10th, which is kind of scary. And we'll just talk about the last team that we have here in the region. FPX, of course, are a very well-known team. They have been in the Valorant scene since day one. This Chinese roster is really good. They play their own unique style, especially double controller. They're used to coming in English and Chinese. They brought in an Australian duelist player named Autumn, who played extremely well during all the Evolution Series events. And they also brought in Life, who is in Chinese staple and has literally brought multiple teams to international events. So that's just a firepower upgrade. And they dropped Nijao, or TZH, who I said went over to DRG, and I'm kind of iffy on him. So I mean, like, you get an upgrade, like, I don't know. I think FPX can be very good this year, and I'm excited to watch them and see how they perform. And there you go. That's my preseason power rankings for China. This is kind of unknown just because so much variability has happened in the past few months. So I'm just really excited to see this league kick off and see EDG come back and kick everybody's ass, because, you know, EDG's great. EDG is great. So yeah, overall, those are just every single power ranking that I have for each of the 4 regions for the Valorant Champions Tour that is kicking off this week. Let me know down below in the comments which teams you are rooting for. Who do you think I placed too low or too high? Am I rooting for the wrong teams? Do I have too much hopium for the wrong teams? I would just love to hear what you guys have to say, because of course it's always a great time talking to you all. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, stay hydrated. Peace.